Hey guys, I am the MMA Breakdown, and today we're doing predictions for UFC 203, Miocic versus Overeem. I'm sorry guys again for the late video, but I'm gonna fix this. I had this video filmed a week ago, filmed it a couple times actually, but I just didn't like how it was turning out, and I was changing some of my predictions. So here we are again, last minute, day before the event. But I'm sorry, I will fix this. I'm going to get my videos for the next two UFC events filmed this weekend. So I'm sorry for the delays, but yeah, this is not going to continue. Follow me on Twitter. My link is in the description. UFC 203. The main event has really grown on me the more I think about it. I think it's a really compelling matchup. The rest of the main card, not great matchups for a pay-per-view, but just in terms of how much I'm looking forward to the fights, I think they are pretty good matchups. And then the prelim card, not so great for me. So overall, I would say it's kind of an average event. Yeah. First fight on Fight Pass at lightweight, Drew Dober versus Jason Gonzalez. Jason Gonzalez was on Tough this season with McGregor and Faber. Was it 22, 23? And Gonzalez lost the decision to Abner Tavares. I feel like I shouldn't make a pick here. I haven't seen any other of Gonzalez's fights. I feel like Dober is probably at least the level of Tavares, if not a little bit better, just because of his UFC experience. But Dober, to me, is still a really inconsistent guy. I mean, it was just two fights ago that he tripped over himself in the opening minute of his fight against Escudero and ended up getting choked out from that slip up. But his last performance against Scott Holtzman, he looked better than ever, really putting together his kickboxing and his wrestling. So I don't know. I will end up taking Dober though, at least as far as my fantasy picks go, just based on the UFC experience and not knowing much about Gonzalez other than his tough loss. So yeah, I'll take Dober, but again, I think Dober is inconsistent enough that it would not surprise me seeing a newcomer beat him. And even the fight with Holtzman, while Dober looked good, parts of his game looked really good, it was still a really close fight. So yeah, I'll take Dober, but not super confident about that. Now, welterweight Yancy Medeiros versus Sean Spencer. I'm going to take Medeiros. I think that he, being the more unorthodox and diverse and wild striker, is going to be what wins him this fight. Although Spencer is not a bad striker, technically and visually, his striking looks pretty stiff, but it is effective. He does have some power. Hurt Pendred, and he hurt who's the Cuban fighter, Alex Garcia, and then his last fight was tagging Pyle before Pyle came back and overwhelmed him and got the finish. And in hindsight, I think that's a really bad loss. You know, Pyle just got destroyed by Alberto Mina. And Spencer has not finished anyone. His biggest win is a decision over Paulo Thiago. So really hasn't been an impressive fighter. And Yancy Medeiros has been in there with some really good guys. You know, Jim Miller, even being in there with Trinaldo, who dominated him. But still, I think these are a lot higher level fighters than the guys that Spencer has fought. So yeah, I'm going to take Medeiros. A little bit worried about his inability to deal with pressure, people coming forward. And Sean Spencer isn't really that type of fighter. But he does have consistent output with his striking, and Trinaldo was just able to just run through Medeiros, get in his chest, and push him back the entire fight. I don't think Spencer's going to do that. I think Medeiros is going to catch him with one of those spinning back kicks or some unorthodox strike like that. I like Medeiros. We've seen him hurt guys on the feet and then finish him off with that guillotine, pretty nasty one he has. So I don't know if it's going to be TKO or submission, but I do like Medeiros for the finish. All right, on to the FS1 card. Light heavyweight CB Dollaway versus Francimar Barroso. CB Dollaway moving up to light heavyweight for the first time in his UFC career. I think that move should probably work for him. I don't know if it will. I don't really like to speculate about weight class changes and the effects that they'll have. It's just really hard to predict that kind of thing before seeing someone fight in the weight class. Dollaway was really kind of improving and I think really putting together his striking and wrestling game very well. But then this recent skid he's on, he just hasn't been impressive. Losing to Bisping, Machida, those are more excusable losses, even though he was not competitive. Well, definitely not in the Machida fight. A little bit in the Bisping fight. He did drop Bisping, but technically couldn't hang with him for the rest of the fight. But it was his last loss to Marquardt that, for me, was really bad and really telling. I mean, Marquardt was a guy that was just looking terrible. Everyone was calling for him to retire. I definitely was. I mean, he just looked like garbage against Gastelum, and Thiago Santos ran through him. That was after the Dollaway fight, but yeah, Marquardt, he made Marquardt look like a relevant fighter again. Marquardt caught him with his hands down. He left himself exposed, and Marquardt put him out cold. Not a good look. And Francimar Barroso, while having some terrible fights and some really bad losses to Hans Stringer, that's the one I'm thinking of, probably the most notable one. But also having a terrible fight in his debut against Arnaldo Oliveira, one of the worst fights that I can remember ever watching. Since then, I think he's kind of improved. He's very low output, very kind of low energy, fights at a very slow pace. But his striking is technical, at least against Ryan Jimmo. And his takedown game looked pretty good against Elvis Mutapcic. Really timed the takedowns very well. I'm going to take Barroso here. I know that's not a good pick, but Dollaway has not been impressive for a long time. And against Marquardt, it just seemed like he really was hesitant, gun shy, did not let his hands go. And Barroso, I think, can be defensively sound enough to just kind of play a point sparring game at range against Dollaway, avoid getting in a brawl, maybe hit some takedowns. He just looks like the fresher fighter to me at this point in their careers. Dollaway should be the favorite, and I understand why everyone will pick him, but I have to go with Barroso. The guy who looks like he's still adding skills and still developing, I have to take that guy over a guy who has power, has some raw ability, but has just been on the decline. So, yeah, I'm going to take Barroso to win a really slow, boring decision. At middleweight, Magalhaes versus Brad Tavares. I like Tavares. he can be put out, and that's the one thing that he has to watch out for. That's where Magalhaes can win, I think, is early first round knockout. Cal Magalhaes blitzed Luke Zachrich and who was the other guy? Trevor Smith, I believe, in wins that looked almost identical. He can hit hard. He has power. But outside of that, I don't think he has much of a game at all. Josh Saman dominated him, took his back standing and choked him out. And Saman has not gone on to have success in the UFC. He lost both of his fights after that. So that tells me that Magalhaes just isn't really built to win rounds at a higher level of the game. And Tavares, he can be put out. Like I said, the Whitaker knockout loss was particularly devastating, as well as the Tim Boetsch loss. Although he looked better than ever in the Tim Boetsch fight, was doing really well in the clinch. And yeah, I thought he looked great in that Boetsch fight, but just ate a shot in the third round that put him out after he was dominating the guy. So, that's a concern. But I don't think Magalhaes is going to be there to do that in the third round. Tavares still is a really solid kickboxer. He's not dangerous, not a finisher. Doesn't really have a win over great guys. Does have the win over Larkin. That was before Larkin was great, before what he is today. But yeah, I think Tavares will weather that early storm, and from there, technically, he should be the much better striker. Yeah, I like him to get it done with the kickboxing and win a pretty sound decision over Magalhaes. All right, at lightweight, or now catchweight, I guess, Nick Lentz versus Michael McBride. Really sad that we're not going to see the original matchup, Lentz versus Mirbek Taisumov. I thought that would have been probably the best matchup on the card other than the title fight. Yeah, that was the perfect test for both guys, wrestler versus devastating striker matchup. I don't know Michael McBride. Nick Lentz, I would assume, would win. But Nick Lentz, lately, I think he's been better. I thought he looked impressive in his loss to Oliveira. Was impressive in that he closed the distance and was just able to box up Oliveira from the pocket. And moving back up to lightweight against Danny Castillo in his last fight, I don't think he looked great. It was a split decision. Hit some nice judo throws, looked physically stronger. But I didn't think it was a great performance. But before his last two fights, this guy has still been inconsistent and has been put in trouble on the feet by a lot of guys. His fights against Nunes and Hakran Diaz years ago, he was able to dominate with the wrestling early on. In the third round against Diaz, started to lose the fight, and Nunes, every time the fight was on the feet, Lentz was getting lit up. And even against Manny Gamburian, a fading kind of shot fighter, he still got tagged in that fight and couldn't really do much to Gamburian. Wasn't very dominant in that fight. So Nick Lentz is still somewhat of an inconsistent guy to me. I would assume that he gets this win here over a newcomer that I don't think is on anyone's radar, really. Last fight on FS1 at women's bantamweight, Jessica Ai versus Bethe Correia. I'm taking Jessica Ai. I think she's just the better boxer, the better overall mixed martial artist. Bethe Correia, I've never understood, what people think is so special about her game. Her claim to fame in the UFC has been, her wins over Shayna Baszler. a finish over her and a win over Jessamine Duke, a decision win. And to me, that just doesn't really mean much of anything. I didn't even think she won her fight against Julie Kedzie. But Jessica Eye, I think she should be the better boxer, technically a little better, and just a more proficient and varied striking game. Correia can hit hard, but I think I should use distance better, better combinations, angle, stuff like that. I think she's just the better boxer. And even against Juliana Pena, had some brief success on the ground early in that fight, took Pena's back. She proceeded to get dominated, but overall I think she is just the better mixed martial artist. But she's been on a skid, looked really bad against McMahon in her last fight, just looked completely gun shy, did not throw her hands at all, and let McMahon completely ragdoll her. Her other losses to Tate and Pena also came because of her inability to grapple, especially off of her back. But those, I think, were more excusable than the McMahon loss. So I wonder about her confidence here. Correia is always confident and always, comes to fight and brawl. But I think if looks the way she did against Leslie Smith and Sarah Kaufman, even what's her name? Alexis Davis, in a fight she lost also because of grappling. I think she should beat Bethe Correia. So I'm going to take her by decision. All right, on to the main card at women's strawweight. Jessica Andrade versus Joanne Calderwood. I think Andrade is just primed to run over her here. Calderwood, I picked against her again in the Latorno fight, and she really impressed me. Not a flawless performance. She still got hit, but definitely the finish was impressive. The spinning back fist. Calderwood's just a slow starter. There's no doubt about it. The Miocic fight, Miocic, and especially in hindsight, she is not any kind of knockout striker. And not that she really hurt Calderwood, but she just blitzed her, was able to drive her back into the fence, pulled guard, and submitted her off her back. And even the Courtney Casey fight, she came out strong against Calderwood, and she has proven to really be a good fighter, really has exceeded expectations. But yeah, I just feel Calderwood is a slow starter. Even in the Seohee Ham fight, she got bloodied a bit, wore some damage in that fight. And Andrade, I was really starting to wonder, I thought she was kind of slipping into the abyss. Her last couple of fights at bantamweight there against Sarah Morris, where she almost gave the fight away at the end of it in the third round, and then getting finished by Pennington and Marion Renault early in those fights. I thought, she was kind of fading out of the organization, but in her fight against Penne, who admittedly did not have any striking skills to hang with her on the feet. She was pretty defenseless there, but still Andrade just looked reborn. One of those weight class changes that just seemed to really work and be the right move. Reminded me of the Lorenz Larkin weight class change, and how great he's become at welterweight. But Andrade, she just seemed to let her hands go. She had speed, aggression, power that she didn't seem to have at bantamweight. And I could see her just blitzing Calderwood, throwing those big combinations, and Calderwood just kind of retreating into her shell, and Andrade getting an early finish. So that's what I like. I do think that Calderwood has the better overall game, and should she be able to weather that storm, then I think she should probably win a decision. She can make adjustments on the feet, like in the Courtney Casey fight. Like I talked about how Casey got off to a strong start. she made adjustments and won a decision in that fight. And same in the Latorno fight, was able to time that spinning back fist and got better at reading Latorno as the fight went on. So if she weathers that storm against Andrade, I definitely like her chances to win a decision, but I don't think she's going to do that. I don't think she's going to be able to get past, all of the volume that Andrade is going to put on her. Andrade will definitely be able to close the distance, being the smaller fighter. And yeah, I like her to get the TKO. All right, bantamweight Uriah Faber versus Jimmy Rivera. This is one of the better matchups on the card. I like Rivera to win it. Faber's been on a decline for a long time, ever since the second loss to Browne. His striking just technically isn't there. I think that's mostly because he's just getting older and never really had a technical striking game. His game was always kind of highly dependent on his athleticism, his explosiveness, and his ability to take guys down, or at least get the fight to the ground. But now, against guys like Caceres and Francisco Rivera, where he just wasn't having any success on the feet and could not take him down, he just looks like technically he cannot hang with these guys on the feet. And I was going to say partly due to his aging, but also since Ludwig has left Team Alpha Male, I think we've seen all of those guys, except for Dillashaw, we've seen their striking suffer. So yeah, I think Rivera, being a really solid boxer and having big power, at least in his Brimage fight, his last two fights didn't show the power, but I think he's going to outbox Faber. But Faber showed up for that Cruz fight in the first couple of minutes of the first round. I thought really poured it on Cruz, hit him with some big shots, seemed to tire him. If he comes with that kind of effort against Rivera, if he's able to land those big shots that hurt him and create scrambles, grapple with him, maybe create an opportunity for a guillotine or submission, I think he could probably win. Might be able to get a finish. But I don't like him to do that. I think it's more likely Rivera outboxes him for a decision. Also the Sainz fight, Edgar really struggled with the leg kicks, and I thought he did not win that fight. I feel strongly about that. I think it was really gifted a decision. Still, had the big moments of offense in that fight. Dropped Sainz a few times, got him on the ground, but his double leg is just not there. Like I said, was getting his takedown stuffed by Rivera. Could not take down Edgar at all, and didn't have any success on the feet against him either. Just technically, his striking is not there. He's not able to get that takedown anymore. He fights down to his level of competition. So I like Rivera here to get a pretty closely contested, but a decision where he has the striking advantage and just proves to be the more capable striker. All right, at welterweight, CM Punk versus Mickey Gall. I'm taking Gall. Younger, a lot younger, more athletic, looked comfortable, looked dangerous in his fight against Mike Jackson. But I don't think it's crazy at all to pick Punk, or just if he wins, I wouldn't be really surprised at all. People are acting like he's going in there fighting GSP or something. No, he's not a good MMA fighter, and he's not going to be good for the little time he's trained. But he doesn't have to be good. He's fighting Mickey Gall. This guy, 2-0, I think, as a pro, and a couple amateur fights. And that experience should count. That's another factor for picking Gall. But I don't think it should count for so much that Punk, if he's been really dedicated to his training, and he's training with a world-class coach, it shouldn't count for so much to say that Punk just has zero chance of beating him. Mike Jackson, who was that guy? I think he was a reporter and he retired right after the fight. Who ever heard of this guy? And I remember before that fight, Zane and Connor from Bloody Elbows MMA Vivisection, I think they both picked Mike Jackson in that fight. So, yes, I'm taking Gall. He should be the favorite. I don't really see a reason to take Punk, but I don't think it's at all crazy or, highly unlikely that Punk could end up winning the fight. So, yeah, I'm going to take Gall by a first-round sub. I think he... that's what everyone's thinking here. He's going to do the same thing he did to Mike Jackson, and younger, more athletic, looks comfortable in there. I'm going to take him, but 2-0, another green, very inexperienced fighter. I don't see why Punk couldn't beat him. The co-main event at heavyweight, Fabricio Werdum versus Travis Browne. Initially, I was going to take Browne. I really was set on doing that just because of how much Werdum's performance in his last fight bothered me. It was very bizarre. This guy was on a long win streak that led up to him winning the title, and he had looked flawless and had really impressive, decisive wins over Nelson, Mark Hunt, and obviously Cain Velasquez. And this guy just fought like a guy who had no fight IQ at all against Miocic. Made no sense the way he fought, and like he was just setting himself up for the knockout, welcoming it, and it happened. So just for that reason alone, I felt like I could not trust this guy going into the Browne fight, going into a rematch, and I think Browne's going to be really motivated to get the win. And also because I think Browne has made some improvements. Technically, he's really kind of moving away from the kind of wide open dynamic style. A lot of footwork, a lot of movement, and more of an orthodox, conservative boxing game they showed against Mitrione. And I thought, that coupled with Werdum just having a totally bizarre performance in his last fight, and also the fact that it's a rematch. I don't know with Browne. Browne's going to be expecting Werdum to just kind of outstrike him. I don't know if Werdum can do the same thing. I think Browne might be willing to take more risks, go for the knockout. And he had a few moments early in that fight against Werdum. And, also I think, at least his claim was that his leg was injured, I think, early in that fight against Werdum by some of the leg kicks, and that really affected him for the rest of the fight. It just kind of seemed to me like... all these things were coming together for Browne to get an upset win here. But I can't take Browne because he's just not the better fighter. I have to go with the guy who still is the way more skilled fighter. And while I said Browne's made some technical improvements, he hasn't improved anything since that first fight, that first loss to Werdum. After that, he had another really bad loss against Arlovsky, who has not gone on to look good in a fight since then. I thought he lost the Mir fight, and then got stopped very early by Miocic, and then against Overeem. So, and then also against Barnett. So that could have been a 4-fight losing streak for Arlovsky, and he just totally slapped Browne around the cage And then also the Mitrione fight. Browne was not winning that fight at all until the eye poke. Mitrione was outstriking him. So he just hasn't proved anything that he's, really gone up another level or made any big strides in his game since that first loss to Werdum. So I'm still going to take Werdum. I think, it's just as likely. I think that, my theory still stands that, we don't know how Verdum's going to come in, what kind of game plan or anything in this fight. And who knows how that loss affected him. He might be really defensive, which should probably help him. He might be too defensive, so defensive that Browne is able to capitalize on it. But he's still just the more skilled striker. Browne is not a skilled striker. And yeah, I'm going to go with Werdum too. I would say win another decision. That last fight was 5 rounds. In 3 rounds, I think Werdum can be more defensive and play the rounds, the scorecards better in this fight. So I'm going to take Werdum by decision. And then the main event, Miocic versus Overeem. This is really such a great matchup. The more I think about it, I really love this new style we've been seeing from Overeem. Extremely defensive, and just taking time to read his opponents and then just picking them apart beautifully and technically from range. I thought he was done. This guy was the punching bag of the heavyweight division. Just having these really bizarre knockout losses where he was just making big mental errors and all those fights. And his cardio was bad. He would fade easily. And he's just turned it around, and against better fighters than the guys that were knocking him out. I mean, the win over Dos Santos, Dos Santos beat Miocic, and Overeem had a way more dominant, or had a dominant win over JDS, where JDS could barely touch him, and then against Arlovsky, who I don't think is the same level of JDS, but still a really impressive performance. So it wouldn't surprise me to see Overeem continue this style and this improvement all the way up to a guy, to the level of opposition of a guy like Miocic, who should not be able to strike with Overeem at distance. This is still a guy who got knocked out by Stefan Struve, who struggled with his length and who had the more technical boxing. And that was a competitive fight. Miocic landed some big shots, but got knocked out by Struve. And even in some of his other fights, when he's gone the distance, like against Gonzaga, his boxing didn't look great. He does have big power, though. And I think that chin of Overeem is always suspect, and I think that's really going to be his undoing here. Even against Nelson, where he was dominating him, that fight, he was almost exclusively using knees, because he just didn't want to throw hands, because you could tell he did not want to leave himself open to even eating one strike, because I think he knows he can't absorb it. But even that Nelson fight, Nelson came alive in that 3rd round, just started winging haymakers and caught Overeem with one and dropped him. If he doesn't get Miocic out of there, I could see Miocic landing that knockout strike really at any point. I think one clean strike from Miocic, Overeem's not going to be able to take it, because Miocic has big power. We saw it against Werdum, even though Werdum made himself very vulnerable. But against other fighters too, Maldonado, and of course was not a legit heavyweight or even a good fighter, but Miocic definitely has power, and against Arlovsky also. But also, I think Miocic is going to be able to close that distance better than the other guys that Overeem has beaten. Better than JDS, who's more of a technical boxer from the outside. Better than Arlovsky, and even better than Nelson. I think that Miocic will be able to come forward and land that big knockout strike, especially early. And also the wrestling, I think that's one thing that if Miocic chooses to use, he'll definitely give Overeem a different look than he's really had to deal with in the UFC. He hasn't had to deal with a real wrestler at all, since Brock, who didn't even really threaten the takedown much at all. Brock was trying to strike with Overeem. Those two things, being able to close the distance and having that big power and the wrestling, I think are going to be two things that Overeem's previous opponents haven't really had. And even in the JDS fight, seemed like Miocic was trying to replicate what Kane did to JDS, pushing him against the fence, landing shots from the clinch, and it was working for Miocic. So I could see him trying to clinch with Overeem, trying to make it a dirty fight, trying to wrestle with him. But again, Overeem's been so impressive. It's really turned things around. I think he's going to have to be even more defensive, though, in this fight than against JDS or Arlovsky. But would not surprise me if he could do it. Again, technically, from distance, he should have a big advantage over Miocic. A really big one. But I just don't like his inability to eat big shots, and again the fact that he hasn't really had to face a wrestler or a guy who can just come forward, close the distance like Miocic. So I'm going to take Miocic by knockout. I think it probably happens in the first round. The longer it goes, the more I favor Overeem. But a really competitive fight. I think both guys have a really good chance to win this fight. You can make a great case for either guy. You can make a solid pick, I think, for either guy. But I do like Miocic. I think he clips him at some point early and gets a knockout. Those are my predictions for UFC 203. Thank you guys for watching. Again, I'm sorry for the late video. This should be the last one. Gonna do my videos for the next two events, so check. They might be in the description, but you're probably watching this before the event, and they probably won't be done by then. But anyways, just look out for those videos. Follow me on Twitter at MMA Breakdown 0. My link is in the description. Oh, most confident picks. I've been forgetting to do this, but let's do this real quick. I'll go. Every time I do this, I realize that a lot of these fights are just really close. But if I have to give my 5 most confident picks, I'm going to go... I'll go Rivera, Andrade, Tavares, You know what? Forget it. I can't do this. These fights are too close. I might include those in the description, but I don't know. Anyway, thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you in the next video. Bye.